If I lock a highly educated, fiercely independent cynic in a room with a master manipulator, who breaks first? Society tells you it is the weak, the uneducated, the desperate who fall into cults. That is a biological lie. The truth is, your high IQ does not protect you. It makes you the perfect prey. In 2026, as the loneliness epidemic reaches its peak, psychological manipulation no longer looks like isolated compounds. It looks like elite wellness retreats. It looks like hyper-intense corporate cultures. Right now, your primal need to belong is being weaponized. You think you're making rational choices? But beneath your skull, a silent chemical flood is systematically shutting down your prefrontal cortex. Today, we are going to tear apart the illusion of free will. We will expose exactly how modern manipulators hack the ancient survival algorithm of your brain. It is not dark magic. It is not moral weakness. It is a calculated anatomical hijacking. And by the time we finish, you will hold the exact blueprint to never let your nervous system be breached again. But first, we must examine the exact millisecond your own logic betrays you. You sit on your couch watching a true crime documentary about the latest doomsday cult or manipulative wellness empire. You observe the bizarre rituals. You see the absolute financial and emotional ruin. You look at the victims on the screen, and a quiet, comforting thought crosses your mind. You tell yourself that you are far too educated, too cynical, and too grounded to ever be brainwashed. You believe that if a charismatic leader demanded your absolute obedience or subtly tried to isolate you from your family, your critical thinking would instantly trigger the alarm. You would simply stand up, pack your bags, and walk out the door. You build this invisible fortress of intellectual arrogance, convinced that cult recruitment is an aggressive assault on your logic, and that your logic is an impenetrable shield. That is the greatest, most dangerous lie the modern true crime industry has sold you. Cult leaders and toxic communities do not want a battle of wits. They do not target your intellect. They bypass it completely. They do not arrive with aggressive demands, dark robes, or terrifying threats. Instead, they arrive with the exact thing your exhausted nervous system has been desperately starving for. They assault you with radical, unconditional validation. Pop psychology casually calls this love bombing, treating it like a simple manipulation tactic of excessive flattery. But pop psychology is entirely blind to the true anatomy of the attack. Love bombing is not a psychological trick. It is a highly coordinated, weaponized biological hack against a lonely host. When you walk into that elite mastermind group, that intense corporate retreat, or that exclusive digital community, and suddenly 20 people are flawlessly mirroring your deepest insecurities. They validate your hidden genius. They make you feel profoundly seen for the very first time in a decade. Your highly educated brain does not fight this, it surrenders. And here's the cruelest paradox. The secret that manipulators pray you never discover. Your high intelligence does not protect you from the trap, it actively builds it. Brilliant people possess highly advanced capabilities for cognitive rationalization. When the first subtle red flags appear, a strange internal rule, a small financial demand, a minor boundary violation, your massive intellect works overtime to justify it. You use your critical thinking to defend the manipulator simply because the biochemical reward of finally belonging to a tribe is far too intoxicating to lose. You're not weak, you're not stupid. You are a highly evolved biological organism, trapped in an isolating modern architecture, desperate for connection, playing a rigged game against a system designed to exploit your most sacred human needs. So, you smile, you nod along, you agree to the minor sacrifices. You are absolutely convinced that you are still the one holding the steering wheel. But your conscious mind is completely blind to the real battlefield. Because while you're busy analyzing their words and debating their philosophies, your logic is already being quietly dismantled. A much darker, entirely physical war has just begun inside your bloodstream. Forget your personality, put away your college degrees, erase every moral justification you have ever constructed. We are going to look strictly at your blood. When you enter that high control group, you believe you are engaging in an intellectual exchange. You're not. You're walking blindly into a biochemical ambush, Observe the exact millisecond the love bombing begins. A charismatic leader looks deep into your eyes. The community showers you with unearned praise. They flawlessly mirror your hidden grief. At this precise moment, a massive, uncontained surge of dopamine detonates inside your basal ganglia. The reward circuitry of your brain instantly catches fire. But dopamine is merely the bait. The true weapon is oxytocin. Society romantically calls it the cuddle hormone. Evolutionary biology knows it as the ultimate chemical smuggler. Oxytocin is designed to bind mothers to infants. It exists to forge unbreakable tribal loyalty. As this heavy, viscous chemical floods across your neural synapses, it initiates a ruthless physiological override. Watch the shifting of the blood flow. Your brain possesses a strictly limited energy budget. To process this overwhelming emotional high, your cardiovascular system actively reroutes oxygen and glucose away from the prefrontal cortex. That is the highly evolved region behind your forehead, responsible for skepticism, critical analysis, and the enforcement of personal boundaries. Your logic center is literally suffocating. The neural pathways required for doubt are being starved of fuel. The lights simply go out. Look at the scanner. You did not surrender your free will because you lacked mental discipline. Your conscious mind was forcibly chemically sedated. Meanwhile, your amygdala, the primitive threat detection system, is being completely rewired. Oxytocin creates an extreme, blinding biological bias. It actively tags the community and the leader as a primary survival necessity. It equates their approval with oxygen, food, and shelter. If the leader suddenly makes a bizarre, controlling demand, your brain no longer perceives the demand as a threat. It perceives your own disobedience as the fatal threat. Your critical thinking is entirely paralyzed by the sheer terror of losing the chemical supply. This is not a psychological failing. This is a flawless, magnificent execution of your anatomical design. Your body deliberately sacrificed your intellectual autonomy to secure a vital social bond. It executed an emergency protocol, effectively closing the circuit to prevent a complete psychological collapse from your chronic modern isolation. You were successfully hacked because your hardware functioned exactly as it was built to function. It chose the intoxicating warmth of the tribe over the freezing, sterile isolation of analytical truth. You are fully exonerated. The machine did not break. It merely surrendered to its oldest programming. But this realization unveils a terrifying anomaly. Why would human anatomy possess such a catastrophic design flaw? Why would your own DNA deliberately program a self-destruct button for your rational mind? To understand this biological betrayal, we must zoom out. We must violently leave the sterile confines of your modern skull. We must travel back 300,000 years, stepping away from your comfortable living room and plunging directly into the brutal, unforgiving darkness of the ancient savannah. Leave the sterile laboratory of your skull and travel back 300,000 years. The wind is howling across the brutal, unforgiving expanse of the ancient savannah. You're a fragile primate. You possess no sharp claws, no thick armor, no lethal venom. Your singular ultimate technology is the collective heat of your tribe. In this merciless prehistoric ecosystem, social isolation does not mean feeling depressed or misunderstood. Isolation means absolute, guaranteed physical death by starvation or predation. Nature did not naturally select for the fiercely independent, rebellious thinker who stood up to question the tribal elders. It ruthlessly selected for the loyal conformist. If you disagreed with the collective group, if you challenged the sacred ritual, you were exiled into the dark. And exile was an immediate, unappealable death sentence. Therefore, the brutal mechanics of evolution hardwired a terrifying biological equation directly into your DNA. Belonging equals survival, and rejection equals annihilation. The hominids who prioritized cold intellectual truth over tribal unity did not survive to pass on their genetic material. You are the direct descendant of the ones who compromised, the ones who bowed their heads, the ones who stayed desperately inside the safety of the circle. Now drag that ancient paranoid hardware into the 21st century. Look at the modern architecture of your loneliness. Concrete apartment boxes, glowing digital screens, remote corporate workflows, fragmented communities. The genuine physical tribe has been systematically eradicated by modern civilization. Yet that primitive survival algorithm is still running frantically in the background of your brain, perpetually scanning the barren horizon for a campfire to sit around. This is the catastrophic evolutionary mismatch. The modern psychological manipulator does not need to invent new ways to control you. They simply build a highly synthetic, artificial fire. They construct digital echo chambers, hyper-intense corporate families, and manicured wellness cults. They offer you the exact tribal inclusion your genetic code has been screaming for since the day you were born. You're not fighting a charismatic guru or a toxic manager. You are fighting the entire accumulated weight of human evolution. How could you possibly win? You cannot outsmart 300,000 years of primal survival programming with a simple boundary setting workshop or a positive affirmation. When the high control group threatens to socially exile you for asking rational questions, your nervous system does not politely perceive it as a toxic social dynamic. It physically perceives the snapping jaws of a predator in the cold dark. This is your grand historical absolution. Your failure to walk away from that manipulative group was never a lack of personal courage or a deficit of intelligence. It was the desperate, magnificent effort of your biology trying to keep you alive in an artificial, isolating environment that actively profits from your starvation. You are a tragic victim of a deep chronological mismatch, an ancient survivor trapped in a digital cage. But let us stop the pendulum right here. The roaring fires of the ancient savannah are gone. The cold algorithms of the modern cult are temporarily silenced. Discard the evolutionary timelines. Put down the anthropological data. Bring your awareness violently back into the heavy, quiet physical space of the exact room you're sitting in right now. Take a deep breath, because understanding your history does not automatically stop the bleeding in the present. The science has finished its rigorous defense of your actions. Now, we must leave the laboratory and step into the terrifying silence of your conscience. Listen to the deep silence of the room. The grand anthropological defense has ended. The heavy, exhaustive books of evolutionary biology are closed. Right now, there's only the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing. Feel the air moving quietly through your lungs. Notice how the tension in your shoulders slowly begins to drop, surrendering to gravity. For years, you have carried the exhausting burden of trying to be intellectually impenetrable. You demanded absolute perfection from your own mind, quietly punishing yourself for every time you fell for a charismatic promise, a manipulative leader, or a false community. You believed that your vulnerability was a profound defect, a weakness you had to hide from the world. It is time to let that heavy, rusted armor fall to the floor. The truth is that a flawless, unhackable mind simply does not exist. An impenetrable surface has no friction, and without friction, there can be no genuine human connection. Your desperate, aching need to belong, your capacity to be swept away by the brilliant illusion of a perfect tribe, is not a moral or intellectual failure. It is the most beautiful, sacred proof that your nervous system is fully alive. It is the undeniable evidence of a biological organism bravely searching for warmth in a deeply broken, isolating world. Do not be ashamed of the scars left by those toxic environments. They are the quiet, honorable metals of a heart that dared to participate in the terrifying vulnerability of the human experience. But here, in this peaceful space, the architecture of the game fundamentally changes. We are handing you the ultimate hidden switch. You are no longer a blind passenger strapped into this biological machine. Because once you truly see the hidden gears, the magic trick permanently dies. The next time a digital community showers you with unearned praise, the next time a visionary leader demands your unconditional loyalty to their grand cause, your ancient amygdala might still briefly crave the chemical rush, but your consciousness will simply sit quietly in the dark, observing the dopamine flood the room, recognizing it for exactly what it is, a mechanical transaction, a highly orchestrated artificial fire. You are hereby granted the absolute existential license to step away from the warmth. You possess the sovereign right to walk out of the glowing circle, to choose the quiet, mundane, and magnificent reality of your own isolated truth. You do not need to fight them, and you do not need to dismantle their doctrines. You only need to politely unplug the machine. The illusion only survives if you agree to trade your autonomy for their synthetic oxygen. The absolute power has returned to your hands. The profound question is, when the artificial warmth fades and you're left standing entirely alone in the quiet dark, what will you do with this terrifying freedom? You walked out of the glowing circle, you politely unplugged the machine, you sit in the quiet dark, absolutely convinced that the war is finally over. It is not. Escaping a high control group only severs the external connection. It does nothing to address the silent physical devastation left behind inside your skull. The extreme chemical flooding you endured did not just bruise your abstract ego, it fundamentally altered the physical architecture of your neural pathways. Those adverse experiences acted as a microscopic architect. They carved new hypervigilant routes through your gray matter, permanently changing how your body processes fear and trust. The manipulator has physically left the room, but their ghost is still hardwired into the electrical grid of your nervous system. If you have ever walked away from one toxic dynamic only to find yourself drawn into another, this is your biological footprint. The trauma is not a memory, it is a physical structure. You're standing at a critical intersection. Make a definitive choice right now. Will you passively carry this corrupted code forever, allowing a ghost to dictate your future connections? Or will you take the responsibility to tear down and rebuild the foundation of your own mind? Type your choice in the comments. Acknowledge the invisible architecture, because simply walking away was only the primitive survival reflex. The clinical physics of how trauma permanently rewires your brain, and the evidence-based science to completely reverse that anatomical damage. That is the profound neuroplasticity we will decode in the next video.